Hi everyone, I'm Brenda Cardinal of stampintulip.stampinup.net, and I want to thank you for joining us for the March 2021 Stampin' Class by Mail. I've teamed up with fellow demonstrator Gina Wieselman to offer these monthly classes by mail. This month, it's Gina's turn to show you how to stamp and assemble your cards, and next month, it'll be my turn. Stay tuned to the end of the video for a sneak peek of the cards I designed for April, and for some bonuses for signing up for that class. Have fun making your cards, and here's Gina.
Thanks, Brenda. Hi everyone, I'm Gina Wieselman of MySweetPaper.com, and I can't wait to show you how to stamp and assemble your cards using the Snail Mail suite by Stampin' Up. This suite can be found in the January to June 2021 mini catalog. From the suite, we'll be using the Snailed It stamp set, Snail Dies, Snail Mail Designer Series paper, Snail Mail Twine Combo Pack, and resin hearts. We'll also be using the Stitch Shapes dies and Layering Circles dies from the annual catalog. If you ordered a kit from either Brenda or me, all of your supplies have been cut for you. Before we start stamping and assembling, you'll just want to gather a few more supply items to complete the cards. You'll need the Bermuda Bay ink pad, Basic Gray ink pad, Memento Tuxedo Black ink pad, Stampin' Seal adhesive, mini glue dots, multi-purpose liquid glue, mini Stampin' Dimensionals, paper snips, a bone folder, a stamparatus, and an assortment of clear blocks. Please reach out to either Brenda or me if you need any supplies or if you'd like more information about becoming a Stampin' Up demonstrator or hosting an event. Let's get started. Our first card design is the Happy Mail design. If you purchased a kit by mail from either Brenda or me, all of these parts and pieces will be cut and shipped to your door. If you're doing the class on your own, feel free to pause the video here and get all of these parts and pieces ready to go before you come back to stamp and assemble. I always like to start with my stamping first, just to make sure that if I screw up at all, I can flip over and have a free second shot. So I'm going to bring in my Bermuda Bay ink pad. And with this ink pad, I'm going to use the little heart stamp. So I'm going to just kind of randomly stamp a few hearts, both on this outside piece. I'm kind of going at a diagonal. And then I'm also going to just stamp a few to decorate the inside of the card. There we go. Of course, you could also pull out an envelope and add some stamping to decorate the envelope as well. The other stamping for this card will be done using the Memento Tuxedo Black ink pad. And there are two different things we're going to stamp. One of them is this Happy Mail enclosed right on the white piece of cardstock. And this is a cling stamp set, which means I can't see through it. So you can decide whether you would like to stamp it or if you would like to try the stamparatus for perfect placement. So I'm going to ink up and I'm going to give it a shot and see how close I get. Not terrible, actually. So I could stick with this if I wanted. I could also always trim down the side to make it even more perfect, or I could also use my stamparatus. I'm definitely going to want to use this stamparatus for stamping the little pink envelope. So what I have here is my stamparatus, a piece of grid paper, and then one of these magnets that I'm going to use just to hold that grid paper. So I've mounted my Happy Mail enclosed stamp just kind of randomly over here. And I'm going to ink it up and stamp on the grid paper. Now, if you so desire, you can come back with your basic white cardstock and position that and stamp. See, and that was much better than my initial attempt freehand. So I'll go with that one. And then also in your kit, you received the negative as well as the die cut envelopes. So what I'm going to do is just line this up with the envelope, and you can see that it is directional. So I will want to make sure that I line it up in a way that results in an equal border around the envelope. And then I'll just use my other magnet to hold that down. I will drop in the die cut envelope right into that space. Ink up my stamp again. And apply pressure. And now, in that way, I have this perfectly stamped little envelope. Of course, while you have this set up, I would highly recommend stamping the others as well so that you have all of the parts for your 3 cards ready to go. That is all the stamping for this card, so I'm going to go ahead and assemble. So I'll start with my card base and take my bone folder, get a nice crisp crease, and then I can go ahead and adhere both this outer panel and the inner panel on the card. And I'm going to be using my Stampin' Seal adhesive. So I'm aiming for equal borders here. I will put this on the inside with equal borders as well. Then for adhering these really cute little strips of designer series paper, you'll notice they are at an angle, so you don't have to worry about being too precise here. And I have a slightly woven look going on, but you know, I'm not real worried about it being a perfect kind of woven effect. So when I was making the sample, what I actually did was work clockwise around the card to adhere everything. So I started with one of the long pieces, then I did a short piece, and of course you could decide any placement that you would like. Then I added the hearts. They are directional, so that's the one piece that you'll want to kind of attend to. And then I put the last on top. Of course, you could try to really weave them together if you desired that effect, but I think it looks great without as well. So I'm just going to add some adhesive and start placing. Now the next things that I'm going to put together are this super cute little envelope. So this is cut using the snail dies, and it die cuts as well as creates these little embossed score lines for you. So I'm going to flip it over. You can kind of see that there's a more polished looking right side and a wrong side. And with the wrong side up, I am going to come in with my bone folder and fold each side in, and then the bottom. Okay. Now, when I adhere this, I do want to note, I'm actually going to be using it like an envelope. So it needs to remain open, not completely sealed off, so that I can tuck this little happy mail right inside of it. So what that means for me is I'm going to be using glue dots, and I'm going to put one glue dot on the front of one of the flaps, overlap the other flap on top of it, like that. And then I'm going to pick up another glue dot on the inside of the bottom flap. And in that way, I can seal it up and it still will function like an envelope. If you have any glue dot that's showing, you can just kind of tuck that in as well. Then for this, I'm going to go back to my regular Stampin' Seal adhesive and position that at the corner of my card. Come back in again with Stampin' Seal. I'm going to just put this little pink envelope right over the top of the other one. Of course, my mistake here, the not so great stamping, will be hidden when I slip this in. And the last finishing little touch is this resin heart embellishment. And I am just going to peel that up and put it right on the envelope. And that's our first card design. Our second card is the Snail Greetings card. And here are the parts and pieces for this design. So once again, I'm going to start with my stamping. This time starting with the Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And the first thing I'm going to do is stamp the inner greeting that says "You snailed it." So I'll just ink up and then take one of my basic white pieces. They are exactly the same size, so either one will work, and stamp that and set aside. I'm also going to stamp the snail on this die cut circle, which was cut using the Stitch Shapes dies. So I'll just ink that up and then stamp this guy down. Looks good. And then once again, for stamping on this little piece, you could certainly try to eyeball it and take your best shot. But since I have the stamparatus tool, I am going to go ahead and make use of that. Now I know I've already kind of used up this area on the grid paper, so it's not a big deal, but I am just going to drop my stamp, just put it elsewhere, pick it up. Had a little ink left on it, but I'll ink it up nicely, get that pattern made, and then using the same technique, I will come back with the negative, make sure that it is centered, drop that in my pattern, ink, and close the stamparatus. There we have it. Once again, I do recommend stamping all three of those at the same time while you have the stamparatus set up. And then my last piece of stamping, I'll just come in with the hello stamp. And what I'm doing is just kind of making sure that I have this at a slightly downward angle, ink up hello, and stamp that. That is all the stamping for this card, but there is some coloring for the snail image on the front. So I am going to take my basic gray ink pad and open it up, and I'm just going to use the side of a clear block to create an ink palette. Next, I'm going to take my blender pen, and I always try to make sure that it's clean. That looks good. And I'm just going to pick up a little bit of ink from my palette. Now, since this is a snail, perfect coloring is not to be expected, which is nice. But I'm just kind of starting at the bottom and the left side with my darkest color, and then bringing that out and blending that along the rest of the snail body. You can add more, you can play around with how shaded you want to make it, but I am pretty satisfied with that. So I will just take my blender pen and make sure there's no residual ink on it. And then I'm going to come in with my Bermuda Bay ink pad. Now, noting this is the older version of the ink pad where you could kind of squeeze and flex the case a little bit more. So I could certainly take a clean, clear acrylic block and make a palette again, but I actually already kind of have one in the top of my ink pad base. So for this, I will just pick up some of that Bermuda Bay and I'm going to color in just the striped portion of the snail shell. And once again, before I cap my blender pen, I want to just get off any of the excess ink. And I will just kind of scribble. Notice I'm scribbling to the side, not up and down. I don't want to smash the tip, but I do want to make sure that it's running clean and clear so that it's ready to go for my next time. And now that all the stamping is done, I'm going to go ahead and start with my assembly. So I'm going to take my other piece of basic white cardstock and this piece of designer series paper with the cute little mushrooms on it. And I'm going to line up the paper with the bottom. Now, I do often tend to cut these just a little bit too long to make sure that there's no overlap or shortage. So I'll just take my paper snips and trim that. And that right there is why the order matters for assembly. Then with this piece, I will come back in with my Stampin' Seal. And I'm going to center this assembly on the piece of Blushing Bride cardstock. There we go. Next, I will add the strip of Bermuda Bay. And this will extend all the way across the Blushing Bride. And again, I probably gave you a little bit of extra here so that you can trim off any excess and make it a perfect fit. Might have a little trimming there. And then I'm going to come back with the twine from the Snail Mail Twine Combo Pack. And I want this to wrap around this front piece twice. And I want them to cross. I don't want it to look super neat. And then in the back, my trick, instead of dealing with tying a knot or a bow, I'm just going to come in with a piece of Scotch tape and secure that on the back. Now this piece is ready to be brought onto my card front. So I will take my bone folder, score along the crease, and add some Stampin' Seal. Make sure I'm opening the right direction. And slide, if there's any adjustments to that twine, do it now before it's secured down. And center. I'm also going to go ahead and add the inner panel at this point. Once again, centering. And while I have that Stampin' Seal ready to go, I'm going to mount my stamped snail image onto this scalloped circle, which I cut using the layering circles dies. Okay. To finish up the card front, I'm going to adhere our snail and greeting, and you could certainly use regular size dimensionals. I happen to have these mini dimensionals handy, so I am going to just grab a few of those. Peel up the release paper and position that snail. So I have him overlapping with the bottom. And then to add the hello piece, the one thing that I want to be careful of, I also want this popped up, but I want to make sure that that I don't add a dimensional right here at the origin of the speech bubble, because that would make it uneven. So I will just come back in with a couple more of those mini dimensionals, peel the release paper, and add that cute little greeting. Now I do have a couple of embellishments to add, but before I do that, I want to just kind of spice up the inside of the card a little bit, add a little bit of a surprise. So with your kit, you have 2 of the large mushrooms and 2 of the small mushrooms. And what I'm going to do is just trim off the mushroom stem on both of the colored pieces here. So my Real Red and Daffodil Delight, and I don't need those stems. And then I'm going to take my liquid multi-purpose glue and just add some to the mushrooms, the white part. Ooh. And then layer the colored piece right on top. And then I just want to add these as a cute little decoration on the inside of my card. So I will come back with more of my liquid glue. And you can position these wherever you would like. I might do one on that side. And one on the other. Okay, so that's a fun little surprise on the inside. And the last piece that I'm going to add are again the resin heart embellishments. I will add one to the speech bubble, and then one I'm going to put right on the top of the present. And there's our second design. Our third card is the snail pop-up card. Now, before we start stamping and assembling our third card design, which is so fun, I want to show you how I scored the card base to get this fun fold. So what I did first is I started with a standard size card base. So this was a piece of 8.5 by 5.5 basic gray cardstock, and I just scored it down the center at 4 1/4. Now, what I'm going to do is I need to create a score line right along here for the front of the card when it's folded in half. So what I'm going to do is I know I need to roughly line up that portion with the score line. But then I need some sort of way to make sure that it's straight. So what I'm going to be doing is using the 1 3/4 line on my paper trimmer, and I'm going to line up both the middle of this original score line as well as this tip on the corner. So as long as I have that at 1 3/4 and this at 1 3/4, I know my placement is correct. And then I'm going to come in with my light gray scoring blade and score right to the center. I also need to score along this other side. So again, lining up here, I know that this is roughly where it is going to go so that it folds in. And I'm going to bring this corner to 1 3/4, this center score line to 1 3/4, and again, use my light gray scoring blade to create that. And now that our scoring is done, here are all the parts and pieces for this card. And like usual, I'm going to start with my stamping, in this case using the Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And the stamping for this card is really simple. So we have just the hello on the outside and then a little greeting for the inside. So starting with hello, I'm going to take this little envelope, and as I position hello, I'm going toward the top. I am not trying to center it. And you'll notice I didn't do a perfect job here. I must have rocked a little bit and got some ink residue there. That's totally fine. We will cover it up with one of our little creatures. The other stamp is the You've Got Mail stamp, and I'm just going to put that on the inside of my card as a fun little surprise. Now, as I stamp that, I did make sure that the orientation matches up with the fold on my card base. That is all the stamping. And now what I'm going to do is start assembling. So the first thing that I'm going to do is crease my card in half. And then along these other diagonal score lines, I'm just going to fold the card in. And then I'll come back and make sure that it all still lines up, but make, again, a really nice crisp fold using my bone folder. And that is going to create that fun fold effect. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is a little bit of the assembly. So I'm going to take this designer series paper and add some of my Stampin' Seal and just position it across the front. So I'm lining it up with one of the sides, making sure that it's nice and straight. And like usual, I did give you a little bit of excess, so we'll just trim that using our paper snips. For this piece, I do want to note that this is a rectangle. It's not perfectly square. So in my first sample card, I had it oriented this way. You could certainly orient it this way. It's not far off from being square, but I just do want to note that. So what I'm going to do is come in with the twine, also from the combo pack, and I'm going to tie it in a bow. So again, I don't want it perfectly lined up. I want a little bit of variety in the placement. I might even bring this down one more. Okay. And then for tying this twine, you can decide how you'd like to do it. You could certainly tie a bow without a knot first, and that would be wonderful. I did find that it was hard to keep it tight, and since the twine is so thin, I was able to tie a knot first and then tie my bow without having too much excess bulk here. So now that I have this knot and everything nicely situated, I'm going to take the tail that's hanging down, bring that up. Then the one that's already up, I'm going to just bring around and through. And then of course, I will adjust as needed. And pull that nice and tight. And then I'll take my paper snips and just trim those ends. I'm going to go ahead and position this on my card base and get it secured with my Stampin' Seal. And there's no science to this placement, just kind of in the lower corner, wherever you would like. While I have my Stampin' Seal, I'm also going to go ahead and put in my insert. So I'll put that right on the card base. And now for this fun fold kind of pop-up effect here. We have of course our stamped little hello greeting, and then I provided in your kits one of these snails with the eyes closed, as well as the present. Unfortunately, we don't have dies for these, so there is some fussy cutting to be done using the paper snips. And my biggest tip for fussy cutting is I like to keep the scissors in one straight position, and it's actually the paper that I move. So I will just go ahead and cut around that, leaving a little bit of a white border. And now that I have those pieces cut out and ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and attach them to the card using my mini glue dots. Now, one thing that's important to keep in mind placement-wise is we still want this card to fit in a standard size envelope. So I need to make sure that I'm not positioning my snail too far up or down. The other thing that I'd like to note about the positioning is that there are snails facing two directions. This guy was facing the left, this guy is facing the right. So I'm actually going to just kind of flip-flop the placement on this hello banner so that we still get the snail kind of facing the hello greeting. So if I kind of layer this down, again, positioning it on the envelope, the hello is going to get glued inside at the bottom, and I just need to add the snail and present. So I'll start with the snail, and that looks about right. So I'm just going to pick up a glue dot on the inner corner of the snail. And I can always come back here with this just to make sure that I like the placement. Okay. Then with the birthday present, I'm going to get a glue dot on the inner corner here. And again, making sure that it doesn't extend up beyond the top of the envelope. I will place that. And now to attach this, I'm just going to take Stampin' Seal right along the bottom. And one last time, you can tell I really don't want to make this mistake. I'm going to position this in the card, making sure that it will go right in the envelope. And there is our fun little pop-up fun fold. Now, the very last piece that I saved for the end is just popping up our front focal point snail. So once again, I'm going to use some of these mini Stampin' Dimensionals, peel off the release paper, and add that to the front. And there's our third card design. Here are a few samples that I created to share with you. One of the things that I find so striking about this suite of products is the gorgeous colors and the wonderful patterns on the designer series paper. So I decided to make use of the designer series paper. I cut out this big snail and added some decorative elements from other patterned paper within that same set of designer series paper. And then of course finished it off with some of the super cute resin hearts. Once again for this design, I decided to make use of the designer series paper and just cut this snail right out from there. There are cute little hearts as the happy mail in the envelope. I just cut apart the You've Got Mail from the snail stamp. And then I also thought it was fun to use both colors of the twine from the twine combo pack together. Stampin' Up, of course, employs concept artists who come up with all of these samples to put in the catalog. and they're just gorgeous. So I decided to draw some inspiration from this sample right here. So there was the original in the catalog. And here's the design that I put together. So you can see I really made use still of this repeated hello element, the mushrooms that I cut out from the designer series paper. The color scheme is very similar, as well as the 4 rectangles with the blushing bride on basic white. I didn't have this punch, so I decided to go with some simple rectangles, but I think this looks great, and it's a way that I was able to use the catalog for inspiration. And of course, seeing all of these super cute little envelopes and the possibilities with the snail dies, I thought I just have to take some of those small envelopes and stuff them in an even larger envelope for this card design. So if you happen to have the retired envelope punch board, you could certainly use that to create this, or you can cut it and score it manually using this as an outline. And finally, one of the things that I just love about this stamp set is the ability to really make use of our coloring tools that Stampin' Up sells. So I colored the snail and the mushrooms here using Stampin' Blends, a variety of colors, and I had a really good time playing around with the shading too. So going from dark to light and adding some dimension with pop-ups. And I just thought this was a really fun way to showcase both the stamps as well as the coloring tools we have. Thank you for participating in this month's Stampin' Class by Mail. And here's Brenda with a few more things for you.
Thanks for showing us how to make those fun cards, Gina. That snail mail suite is just adorable. If you ordered a class kit from either Gina or me, make sure to follow the link in the email that shared this video with you for a specially curated Pinterest page with even more fun ideas of how you might use your snail mail suite of products. April is my turn to design and share the cards with you, and I'm excited to show you a sneak peek of the cards I designed featuring the Hydrangea Hill suite of products by Stampin' Up. This suite can be found in the January to June 2021 mini catalog. The class includes all the supplies you'll need to make 3 each of the 3 card designs. And for April's class, 2 of our cards will be fun folds. From the Hydrangea Hill suite, we'll be using the Hydrangea Haven stamp set and the Hydrangea dies. Also from the suite, we'll be using the Hydrangea Hill Designer Series paper, the Hydrangea Hill Mercury Glass Designer Acetate, the Gorgeous Grape 3/8" sheer ribbon, and the pastel pearls. We'll also be using some elements that have been pre-cut and punched for you if you ordered a class kit from either Gina or me. These elements include things from the banner triple punch, the layering ovals dies, and the stitched shapes dies. Our ink colors include Highland Heather, Mossy Meadow, and Tuxedo Black Memento. And the adhesives we'll be using include Stampin' Seal, Mini Glue Dots, Mini Stampin' Dimensionals, Multi-Purpose Liquid Glue, and Tear and Tape Adhesive. And for perfect placement of some of our stamped images, I'll teach you how to use the stamparatus. I did want to mention one thing about our Hydrangea Hill Designer Series paper. 2 of the retiring 2019-2021 ink colors, Rococo Rose and Seaside Spray, are included in the color scheme for this paper. If you'd like to purchase cardstock, ink pads, or reinkers in either of these 2 colors, please do so as quickly as possible, as they'll only be available while supplies last. The 2019-2021 ink colors will officially retire May 3rd, 2021. The deadline to register and guarantee your kit supplies for April's class is April 5th, 2021. We have a special bonus, however, if you register by March 27th, 2021. If you register by this date, we'll include 2 completed cards with envelopes with your April class kit. We also have some special bonuses if you find new friends to take our Stampin' Class by mail, so be sure to check your email or reach out to Gina or me if you want to learn more. If you're not already on one of our email lists, please contact either of us to learn more about this, about how to host your own stamping event, other stamping opportunities with Stampin' Up, and of course all the benefits of joining the Stampin' Up family. As always, we appreciate any feedback you have about our Stampin' Class by mail, and until next month, happy stamping!